The Galactic Concord Assembly was built to intimidate. It floated inside the hollowed heart of a blue supergiant, gravity sculpted by ancient machines no living species still understood. Tier upon tier of seating spiraled upward, each platform tailored to alien physiologies, liquid envoys in containment spheres, silicon-based intellects humming inside crystalline lattices, colossal arthropods anchored by mag-field restraints. Light bent strangely here, refracting through energy veils and ceremonial banners that represented empires older than Earth's continents. Commander Elias Rourke stood alone at the human dais. No entourage. No honor guard. No show of force. Just a man in a dark uniform, hands clasped behind his back, eyes steady. Across the chamber, the High Arbiter HFY Arkale hovered above his platform, elongated limbs folded in ritual posture. His chitinous form gleamed under the assembly lights, voice amplifying without effort. "The motion before us is final," HFY Arkale intoned. "The species designated humanity, origin world Earth, is found in violation of Concord Stability Accords." Murmurs rippled outward, vocalizations, pheromone bursts, electromagnetic pulses. Rourke listened. He had learned long ago that silence unsettled the powerful more than protest. "The charges are clear," the Arbiter continued. "Unauthorized infrastructure modifications. Cultural contamination of pre-aligned systems. Refusal of biological harmonization. Persistent deviation from consensus norms." A delegate from the Velis hive clicked irritably. "They evolve too fast. They adapt without permission." Another voice, cold and metallic, echoed from the upper tiers. "They refuse optimization. Inefficiency breeds case." Rourke shifted his weight slightly. He recognized the pattern. The galaxy always feared what it could not standardize. HFY Arkale extended one blade-like limb toward the human platform. "Commander Rourke, you may respond before judgment." Every sensory array in the chamber turned toward him. Rourke stepped forward, boots striking the alloy floor with quiet certainty. "High Arbiter," he said evenly. "Members of the Concord. Humanity acknowledges the accusations." A few delegates stiffened. They had expected denial. Emotion. Negotiation. Rourke offered none. "We entered this body in good faith," he continued. "We shared technology. Open trade corridors. Stabilized frontier systems others abandoned. If those actions are now considered violations, then the Concord has changed its definition of cooperation." HFY Arkale's eyes narrowed. "You presume to lecture an institution older than your species' written history." "No," Rourke replied calmly. "I'm stating an observation." The Arbiter's mandibles twitched, a restrained sign of irritation. "The Concord does not require your interpretation," HFY Arkale said. "Only your compliance." Rourke allowed a small pause. "Then I assume the decision is already made." A heavy silence followed. HFY Arkale straightened. "The Assembly will now vote." Glyphs ignited across the chamber. Light cascaded as each species cast its decision, streams of color flowing toward the central nexus. The process was ceremonial, but the outcome had been decided long before Rourke arrived. One by one, the lights aligned. Red. Gold. Azure. Violet. Against them, a single pale blue, human descent, barely registered. The nexus flared. Motion passed. Earth, exiled from the Galactic Concord. The words hovered in the air, cold and absolute. Rourke felt it then, not fear, not anger, but a quiet confirmation. The last thread had snapped exactly where he expected. HFY Arkale's voice softened, the tone of a ruler delivering what he believed was mercy. "Effective immediately, Earth is stripped of Concord protections, trade privileges, and hyperspace access rights. All human assets within Concord space are subject to withdrawal under supervision." A delegate from the Threx Dominion leaned forward. "You will find survival challenging." Rourke met the creature's multifaceted gaze. "Humanity has always preferred challenges." A few delegates shifted uncomfortably. HFY Arkale studied him carefully. You show remarkable composure for a species facing isolation. Rourke smiled, just enough to be noticeable. Isolation isn't new to us, he said. We mastered it before we reached the stars. The Arbiter's patience thinned. Make no mistake, Commander. Without Concord infrastructure, your trade collapses. Your expansion halts. Your species regresses. Rourke inclined his head politely. Is that the official assessment? It is certainty, HFY replied. Rourke exhaled, slow and controlled, then tapped his wrist console. A single symbol pulsed briefly, the Earth diplomatic seal. I have one procedural question, he said. HFY gestured. Speak. Is the decision final? The Arbiter hesitated only a fraction of a second. It is irreversible. Rourke nodded. Then on behalf of Earth, he said, voice steady, we accept the ruling. The chamber reacted instantly, confusion rippling through the tiers. Accept? No demands? No threats? No appeals? Rourke turned and pressed his thumb to the seal. The symbol dimmed. Earth, diplomatic status terminated. A subtle vibration ran through the assembly as human systems disengaged, protocols severed, access keys withdrawn, agreements nullified. Most delegates barely noticed. They believed exile was a slow death, not a departure. HFY leaned forward. You are condemning your species to obscurity. Rourke paused at the edge of the platform. He turned back once, meeting the Arbiter's gaze. With respect, High Arbiter, he said quietly, you've mistaken your importance. The chamber stilled. Rourke stepped off the dais. Gravity field shifted to guide him toward the exit corridor reserved for departing envoys. No guards followed. None were needed. As the doors began to close, HFY spoke one last time. You will regret this decision. Rourke didn't stop walking. History will decide that, he replied. The doors sealed. Inside the assembly, the Concord resumed its endless debates, satisfied it had contained a problem. Far beyond the supergiant's glare, a human vessel slipped into open space, engines burning steady and unhurried. And for the first time in 73 years, humanity moved forward without asking permission. The moment the last human diplomat left the assembly, the Concord expected chaos. They had imagined panic, petitions, desperate pleas for mercy. They envisioned fleets in disarray, planetary economies collapsing, and entire colonies imploding under the absence of Earth's guidance. What arrived instead was silence. Commander Elias Rourke oversaw the withdrawal personally. From the bridge of the Ardent Resolve, he watched the data streams cascade through his consoles, each symbol representing a hyperlane, a trade hub, a planetary grid once quietly stabilized by human engineering. One by one, access keys were revoked, connections severed. Systems the galaxy had taken for granted began to register delays, failures, and anomalies. Not catastrophic, yet, but noticeable to those paying attention. Rourke's eyes were calm as he addressed his officers. Status report, he said. Lieutenant Marachin glanced at the holographic display. All Concord-linked hyperlanes are disengaging as expected. No resistance, no interference. Civilian trade rerouted automatically. Systems are stabilizing locally. No immediate failures. Rourke nodded. Good. Monitor for secondary effects. The Concord assumes dependence. Let's ensure they feel it gradually. Outside, the corridors of the Ardent Resolve were silent, save for the faint hum of the ship's engines. The crew moved efficiently, each aware of the subtle choreography required. No one celebrated. There was no need. Humanity did not require spectacle to assert dominance. Far from the ship, the galaxy reacted. At the Luthra expanse, energy traders noticed unusual fluctuations. Hyperlane travel times lengthened by hours. A routine shipment of medical supplies to the outer colonies arrived days late. No one noticed immediately that it was not a malfunction, it was absence. The human systems that had quietly managed logistics, balanced demand, and stabilized resource flow were gone. In the corridors of the Concord Assembly, murmurs began to spread. Delegates leaned over, exchanging reports, their screens showing unexpected bottlenecks. Some blamed technical failure, others speculated sabotage, but no one considered that humans had simply left. Meanwhile, Rourke oversaw the final steps. Earth's last trade vessels disengaged from Concord-controlled lanes, their transponders masking origin and destination. On the surface, key infrastructure, satellite networks, planetary communication nodes, hypergate stabilizers, entered autonomous maintenance mode. Systems the Galaxy assumed operated under Concord oversight now ran on human-programmed schedules, unobserved, unclaimed. A junior officer, nervously reviewing the projected supply flows, spoke up. "Commander, the outer colonies may start to notice shortages in some essential commodities." Rourke's gaze did not waver from the display. "They will. But by the time they realize, they'll be scrambling to adapt. Humans will have already moved beyond the choke points." The officer swallowed, understanding the subtle strategy. Humanity's departure was not surrender, it was preparation. Every delay, every minor disruption, was a reminder of what had gone unnoticed for decades. The Galaxy had assumed convenience, stability, and control. Rourke's orders ensured they now realized dependence. Weeks passed in silent adjustment. Concord monitoring stations reported minor anomalies. Ships took alternate routes. Supply chains jittered. The media across countless worlds buzzed with speculation, fear, and frustration, yet no human voice answered. The planet Earth remained quiet, withdrawing behind its shields and orbital grids, observing the Galaxy as it struggled to compensate for the absence it had never appreciated. In the command room aboard Ardent Resolve, Rourke finally allowed a faint smile. "They expect panic," he said to his officers. "But panic assumes weakness. And we are not weak." Lieutenant Chen tilted her head. "Do we engage if they try to enforce sanctions or blockade trade?" Rourke shook his head. "No. Let them scramble on their own. Let them confront the consequences of their assumptions. Our actions are strategic, not reactionary." He walked to the observation deck. Below, Earth rotated, oceans and continents gleaming under distant sunlight. For centuries, humans had survived isolation, wars, plagues, and famine. Now the Galaxy's greatest threat to stability, the assumption that humans could be controlled, was about to be fully tested. Rourke's communicator chimed softly. A report from a nearby fleet. Hyperlane corridors previously maintained by Earthlink systems were beginning to register cumulative delays. Supply convoys were missing schedules, medical shipments delayed, energy rerouted inefficiently. Nothing catastrophic yet, but enough to rattle confidence. "Inform the Council that human systems are offline," Rourke ordered. "No explanations. Let them connect the dots themselves." The message transmitted, imperceptible to most, but the effect was instantaneous. In the Concord assembly, monitors flickered with reports of disruptions across sectors once considered routine. Alarmed delegates sent envoys, technical teams, and auditors to investigate. Each team found operational grids intact, but with no human controllers, subtle inefficiencies compounded quickly. It was the perfect demonstration. Humans had been invisible architects of the Galaxy's balance, and now the architects were gone. Rourke remained on the observation deck, hands clasped behind his back. He watched the stars stretch into lines as the Ardent Resolve accelerated toward the outer edge of Concord space. "No one notices what's missing," he muttered. "Until it stops working." Lieutenant Chen glanced at him, admiration in her eyes. "It's beautiful in a way. How quietly we dismantle their assumptions." Rourke allowed the smallest nod. "Patience. Let the Galaxy realize what we have always known. Dependence is more telling than force." For the first time in human history, the species had walked away, not with conquest, not with war, but with foresight, preparation, and the calm certainty of capability. And as Earth receded behind them, the Galaxy had no idea humanity had already moved beyond its calculations. The first cracks appeared quietly, imperceptible at first. Colonial administrators in the outer sectors noticed subtle inefficiencies in daily operations. Mining shipments arrived late. Energy fluctuations affected habitation domes. Medical shipments, once guaranteed on schedule, began slipping. The galaxy initially blamed weather anomalies, piracy, and technical glitches. But the truth, though invisible, was far more unsettling. Human systems were gone. Commander Elias Rourke observed it all from the bridge of the Ardent Resolve, stationed just beyond Concord space. His monitors displayed cascading data streams from planets, hyperlane corridors, and orbital hubs. Each anomaly was minor in isolation, but together they painted a clear picture. Lieutenant Chen approached, brows furrowed. "Commander, look at the Luthra sector. Energy nodes are failing simultaneously. It's minor, but the pattern is deliberate." Rourke didn't speak immediately. His eyes followed the data, calm and unwavering. "Not deliberate," he said at last. "Ignored? The Concord assumed responsibility for systems we maintained quietly for decades. They never noticed, because they never had to." Reports poured in from other sectors. Supply chains faltered, automated medical drones queued indefinitely, hypergates experienced routing errors. Panic began to ripple among planetary governors, bureaucrats, and merchant guilds. The Concord Assembly convened in emergency. XYR Kale presided, mandibles twitching in irritation. "Report. Explain this disruption," he demanded. A junior analyst stammered, projecting maps onto the chamber's holosphere. "High Arbiter, we cannot trace the cause. Systems appear intact, but essential operational protocols are offline. It seems impossible," XYR Kale hissed. "The humans were exiled. We terminated all Concord-linked access." "Yes, Arbiter," the analyst said nervously. "Yet, the gaps in maintenance coincide precisely with their absence. Core logistics, energy redistribution, hyperspace safety corridors." The Arbiter's eyes narrowed. "They are sabotaging us." A murmur spread through the chamber. Some delegates agreed, others remained skeptical. But the realization was dawning: humanity had never been dependent. The galaxy had been. Back on the Ardent Resolve, Rourke allowed a rare smirk. "They think we would fight them openly," he murmured. "They never noticed we were always supporting their structures, without credit, without oversight." Lieutenant Chen's gaze swept the holo display. "So they are scrambling now?" "They are," Rourke replied. "And it will get worse. Humans do not need to attack. We only need to leave." In the outer corridors of Concord space, planetary governors convened frantically. Fleets were dispatched to reroute energy, inspect hyperlanes, and secure colonies. Communications networks became clogged with inquiries and alarms. None realized the infrastructure they depended upon was human-built and human-maintained. A Threx envoy transmitted to the assembly from the Luthra sector, voice crackling with frustration. "All systems are nominal, yet operational efficiency has dropped 27%. We cannot explain this." "Then you are blind," XYR Kale muttered. He tapped a claw against his platform. "Deploy every technical team. Monitor every human-linked system. They cannot have left such control unmonitored." Back on the Ardent Resolve, Rourke leaned back in his chair, watching the galaxy unravel slowly, predictably. "They assumed we were weak," he said softly. "They never calculated that stability could be quiet, invisible, unappreciated." Weeks passed. Supply bottlenecks worsened. Energy rationing became necessary on some worlds. Medical crises emerged, delayed only because humans had anticipated contingencies in advance, leaving systems functional just enough to avoid immediate disaster. Inside the Concord Assembly, XYR Kale's composure began to fray. Delegates whispered about humanity's foresight, their audacity, and the quiet infrastructure they had taken for granted. Panic became resentment. Panic, and a creeping sense of fear. The humans had never relied on them, and now the galaxy realized it had relied on humans. Rourke observed all of it silently. No fleets were deployed, no weapons fired. Humanity had not engaged in battle, yet the Concord's perception of superiority crumbled. The galaxy's bureaucracy, long accustomed to control, now faced the stark consequences of absence. A communication arrived from a frontier colony. All standard routing and supply protocols fail when Concord systems are used. Local optimization impossible. Humans handled all global synchronization. Without them, chaos approaches. Rourke's smile widened slightly. Patience, he said to himself. Let them understand the lesson. Not forcefully. Not cruelly. Simply, naturally. Even HFY Arcale, arrogant and unyielding, could not mask the shift. He convened emergency councils, sent fleets, and deployed auditors. Every action revealed the same truth: the humans had already anticipated it all. The galaxy, for all its age and power, realized it had relied on a species it assumed to be weak, chaotic, and young. Now, that assumption collapsed under the weight of silent, methodical preparation. Rourke's final order for the day was simple. Continue monitoring. No interference. Let them experience the consequences of their misjudgment. Humanity moves forward, always prepared, always observing. Outside, the stars stretched in streaks as the ardent resolve navigated toward undisclosed sectors. Earth and its colonies remained a silent nucleus, invisible to most, untouchable, and fully capable. For the first time, the galaxy felt vulnerability it had never admitted, and the architects of that vulnerability walked away with quiet confidence. And somewhere deep in the observation deck, Rourke allowed himself a rare thought: humanity did not need approval. It did not need permission. The galaxy would learn, in its own time, what humans had always understood: stability could be silent, power could be hidden, and absence could be decisive. By the time the Galactic Concord fully grasped the scope of its oversight, it was too late. The systems they had taken for granted, the hyperlanes, energy grids, medical networks, and logistical nodes, were failing in ways no emergency fleet could instantly correct. Every fleet dispatched, every auditor sent, every council session convened revealed the same bitter truth: humans had built the backbone of the galaxy's operations, and then walked away. Commander Elias Rourke observed the unfolding chaos from the observation deck of the Ardent Resolve, far beyond Concord-controlled space. Earth glowed faintly in the distance, its orbital grids humming under autonomous power, a silent engine running on foresight and meticulous planning. Humanity was not retreating, they were advancing, expanding beyond the familiar lanes the Concord had assumed they needed. Lieutenant Marichin joined him, her eyes reflecting the distant starlight. They're panicking, she said quietly. Every system they rely on is unraveling, and they don't understand why. Rourke nodded. They always assumed control came from domination. They never imagined stability could be quiet, invisible, self-sustaining. That was our strength. And now, they're learning it the hard way. Across the Concord assembly, envoys scrambled. High Arbiter HFY Arcale's mandibles clicked nervously as reports poured in. Entire colonies experiencing shortages, hyperspace corridors operating at half capacity, energy fluctuations leading to minor, but widespread, crises. Panic was tangible, seeping into every sector. This is unprecedented, a Threx delegate admitted. Without humans, our operations fail. Entire sectors are gridlocked. Supply convoys are delayed. Emergency protocols are insufficient. HFY Arcale's voice was sharp, almost brittle. Contact Earth. Offer negotiations. Propose reconciliation. We will reverse the sanctions if they cooperate. Rourke's communicator chimed, displaying the encrypted transmission from the Concord. He pressed a thumb to it, and the message opened automatically. It was terse, formal, and dripping with urgency. Humanity, we acknowledge the consequences of your absence. We request immediate dialogue to restore operations and prevent further systemic failure. Rourke allowed the message to sit for a moment. His smile was subtle but unmistakable. No, he said, almost to himself. They must understand that we operate on our terms. Lieutenant Chen raised an eyebrow. Are we ignoring them? Rourke nodded. Completely. Let them learn. We don't negotiate from weakness. We negotiate from capability. And they have none of that here, They only have reliance they never appreciated. In the weeks that followed, the Concorde's attempts at reclamation became frantic and increasingly desperate. Fleets were deployed to repair hyperlanes, technicians were sent to fix energy grids, and diplomats attempted to re-establish trade channels. Everywhere they went, the subtle absence of human foresight made coordination impossible. Every intervention was met with delays, errors, or systemic conflict. Meanwhile, humanity thrived. The Ardent Resolve and other Earth vessels charted new routes beyond Concorde space, opening access to previously unclaimed systems rich in resources. Advanced research stations, previously confined to Earth's immediate sphere, now explored deep space anomalies and experimental technologies without interference. Humans moved forward, not with conquest, but with expansion through innovation, patience, and preparation. Rourke watched one of the newly established colonies come online on his monitors. Automated systems, optimized by human engineers long before, began producing energy at levels previously thought impossible. Supply chains were self-regulating. Population growth, environmental stability, and resource management operated seamlessly, free from external oversight. A message finally arrived from the Concorde envoys, desperation plain in the words. Humanity, we offer terms of re-entry. Immediate compliance and restoration of oversight will reverse current crises. Your absence threatens countless lives. Rourke turned to Chin. They finally understand, he said calmly. Not that we are weak. Not that they hold power. They finally understand that humanity does not need the galaxy. They only ever helped it function. A week later, a fleet of Concorde ships approached the Outer Rim, expecting negotiation or perhaps submission. Instead, they found empty corridors, automated waypoints, and silent human outposts beyond their reach. Every attempt at control was rebuffed, not by force, but by planning, foresight, and the invisible scaffolding humanity had left in place. In a final act of quiet defiance, Rourke transmitted a single message back to the Assembly. The Concorde did not exile Earth. Earth walked away. Consider this lesson permanent. The message went unread for several moments, and then thousands of delegates across species absorbed its meaning. Panic, confusion, and awe rippled through the Assembly. HFY Arkale, for all his arrogance, could only stare at the transmission in stunned silence. On the Ardent Resolve, Rourke stepped onto the observation deck. The stars stretched infinitely ahead, free from Concorde maps or rules. Humanity had reclaimed its autonomy, not by waging war, but by outthinking an empire, moving beyond reliance, and demonstrating that absence could be more powerful than presence. Lieutenant Chen's voice broke the silence. So, what now? Rourke looked out into the void. No, he said. We build what they could never imagine. We expand where they assumed they controlled. And we do it on our terms, unbound and unchallenged. The Ardent Resolve ignited its engines, slipping into the unexplored reaches of space. Below, Earth rotated silently, thriving, independent, and untouchable. The galaxy would remember the day it exiled humanity, but it would never again forget the day humans smiled and walked away. And for the first time, in a universe accustomed to domination and decree, one species moved forward entirely on its own terms, leaving the rest to confront the consequences of underestimating them. The Concorde had assumed power. Humanity had assumed freedom. And in that difference lay the greatest lesson of all. Humans had never needed approval. They only needed opportunity.